Good evening. Everybody hear me? Welcome to the June meeting. That's right, this is June, right? Of the River Valley Beekeepers Association. And welcome. I'm glad you're here. I guess the first thing I might mention, like we often talk about, the beekeepers calendar, which is generally speaking what should be going on with your bees now, although I take exception to this month's beekeeper thing because it's not what I'm finding in my hives. But basically it says that if the weather is favorable, the bees will still be bringing in nectar and pollen vigorously, which that is not my experience in my neck of the woods right now. It's absolutely not. But so anyway, what we should be doing is making sure that the bees have space for honey, which my bees aren't putting up any honey right now, so they don't need any more space. We can talk more about that in a little bit. But we should be monitoring for pests. And so far, I haven't seen many hive beetles in my hive, but that will change as the summer goes on. We'll see more and more of them. But anyway, I don't have a special program or anything tonight. It's just whatever we want to talk about. And I hope that's okay with you all. I do have some items that I think we might be worth discussing. But one thing order of business is that next in July, the meeting will fall on the 4th of July. And so the question is whether or not we should have a meeting or just cancel it or just say we have an informal meeting if we want to gather, whoever wants to come and do whatever. So what do people think about next month?
Hot.
Say what?
It would be hot.
It'll be hot. It will be that.
Shouldn't be in here.
True.
Will this place be open?
As far as I know, it's still ours. We haven't canceled it, so it should be available. We'll probably need to tell them if we decide to cancel altogether that we will not be, but expect us again in August. I just know that I don't know that I can commit to being here, but some of you all may want to come anyway. I don't know. So.
There's no way to reschedule it to like next week. You can check and see.
I just really hate to try to do that because it would really. One thing is that other groups have this on I think on the next Monday night there are other groups that have it. So
It'd probably be a scrambled mess.
and it would be. I think it would just introduce confusion that we don't need. Personally, anyway. It's an idea. We actually thought about that, but they're going out. So, I guess, do we have some opinions? Somebody make a motion for something.
I think we should just have an informal meeting, ones that wanna come, like we've done in the past.
Okay.
Get down, we can have a talk amongst ourselves.
The September meeting's gonna be simple really because it's gonna fall on Labor Day. It always falls on Labor Day.
Yeah, it kinda has to, doesn't it? So, we have a suggestion that we have an informal meeting, like no business meeting, so just get together and eat, I guess is what we're talking about, which would be fine. If you're like me and don't have a life.
Well, if nobody has to feel obligated to come if they've got something else to do.
Okay, do we, I guess we should have a vote on that. So all in favor of an informal meeting, next month as opposed to an official meeting, say aye. All opposed? Okay, so let it be.
Three of
Say what?
It'd be three people. Three of
So, I think the decision is that we will have an informal meeting, which means that whoever wants to come and we'll gather here and have dinner and talk and do whatever and not put up with my rambling. With that, I don't really, like I said, we don't have a set program. We're certainly willing to discuss anything related that you want to. I guess normally this time of year, I'm just gonna say, like, I'm kinda curious as what you all are experiencing in your apiaries and your bee yards is, my experience in my yard with the nectar flow this spring was that it was a bit late starting. It was quite intense and then suddenly quit. I mean, it turned off like a light, and that's where we're sitting right now, and my bees you don't even want to get into them right now, cause they are really defensive of what they have. I have the habit of, if I just wanna peek in the top super, just see what's in there, I just, put on my jacket and veil, and I don't bring a smoker, no nothing, and just look in there, but this one hive taught me different. It wouldn't have nothing to do with that. It took me about 30 minutes to get the bees off of so I can get my veil and stuff on. They really mad.
My bees are kind of doing something weird out the front of one of their hives. It doesn't look like any kind of bearding I've ever seen before. They're like all out on front, and they're almost flowing in a pattern. I've got a video of it here if you want to see it. It's
They kind of look like they're doing a line dance.
Yes, to it.
That's a common thing. And
Washboarding.
what they call it washboarding.
Hmm.
There's a name for it, and as far as I know, nobody knows why they do it.
That's the thing. One of my hives was doing it whenever I just got home, and I think today a second hive has started doing it next to them. And I don't know why they're doing it at all.
Maybe if you listen close, you can hear some little fiddles playing. But that is an interesting observation, very, very astute observation, but it's something, I haven't heard an explanation for it, but it is very common.
Well, I noticed on mine that when the nectar flow started slowing down, that's when they started doing that. I don't know if that's got any connection with it or not, but.
I know,
They need something to
We're ready to go somewhere, we just don't know where to go.
I kind of wondered if they're cleaning a little bit.
Little wash rag there.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you started feeding? Have you started feeding yet?
Question is, have I started feeding yet? I have not, and, but that is certainly something to consider is, I really haven't taken my honey off. I did get something quite, for about a 3-week period, they made it honey fast and furious. But
Have you already pulled honey off then?
I have not, just cause I haven't gotten, some people have. I know Jacob Bates has harvested all of his honey, I guess, but, I guess that's something we, probably wouldn't hurt to discuss is whether or not, or how do you know when to harvest your honey, and, it's always a bit of a gamble. Now, I am talking, and please, somebody else has a different opinion, experience, I wanna hear it. I always say you have to make, leave enough honey for them, to live until the next nectar flow, which may or may not be this fall. Now, see, last year I harvested pretty hard, about this time of year, and thought I left them plenty of honey, but then we had a long dry summer and a long dry fall, and we didn't get the goldenrod nectar flow that we usually count on, and I was scrambling to get my bees fed up to get them through the winter. I managed to do it, but it was pretty hectic. So, this year, this is just me thinking I'm gonna probably, cause you know, there won't be much more nectar, more honey made until this fall, if we get any this fall. Now, we still have, I've noticed that sumac is about to bloom, or just started blooming. That should produce some nectar.
Elderberries
Elderberries are blooming right now. I don't know how much they use elderberry. I don't know. John, do you know?
They will use them, but right now, one thing that most people don't catch that is in bloom right now is the buckthorn.
I don't know what a buckthorn is, but.
It's spear leaf,
Oh, is that that
usually be a
little
tree
bush
from
thing
as
that
tall as
makes-
this ceiling to this high.
Makes little red berries?
When it's done blooming, you get red berries.
I have like 2 plants of that about this tall in my yard.
Well, I promise you, there's a bunch of it down there around the lake.
John?
The chestnuts are blooming right now, and the catalyst. Ours is actually still going pretty good. Still ranks.
No, I don't think
More of the living.
beautyberry hasn't, around my place, hasn't bloomed yet. I think they will get a little nectar from that. So there's a little stuff that may trickle in still to come, maybe. I guess don't do like I did last summer and just let them sit there and eat it, just starve all summer, really. Cause if we're not in the summer dearth, we're pretty close to it. Which brings me to one of my props, is something that may or may not happen to your beehive, depends on how well behaved your bees or your neighbor's bees are. John's bees come and rob my bees. I know it's his bees.
Quit feeding them.
But sometimes, a weaker hive, especially a weaker hive, may get robbed out by a stronger hive, and they make these little devices like that it doesn't hurt to keep some of those around, or maybe even some people keep them on their hives year round. It's called a moving or robbing screen. It's got these little, I'm gonna lay this down. It's got these little doors that slide up, and so you can, and it's got one here in the top. So if you have it on there and they're getting robbed out, you can, for a while, if you want to just stop everything, and you can just close down complete access, still get a little ventilation through this screen. Or what you can do is you can open this top one, and the robber bees are not so likely to try to access the hive through this top one. And so then you can kind of gradually open back up but you gotta kind of be there, catch it, at the right time. So it makes some sense that if you already have this on there, all you gotta do is go over there and flip a switch, so to speak. But that's something that you should be watch out for. There's probably other ways of solving that, but this makes it pretty easy.
But how about pests? I mean, I'm, knock on wood, I went through 11 boxes yesterday, saw maybe 2 beetles, and I was shocked, because usually I've got plenty of beetles, I'll share some later in the year. I just so far haven't seen any.
Now, hive beetles, and that's kind of been my experience so far, and it pretty much every year, coming out of the winter into the early spring, I don't see many hive beetles. But that seems to be, they ramp up and increase gradually all summer. And, they can be a serious problem by the end of the summer, so I keep those little what they call beetle blasters. I keep those in my hives year round, pretty much all the time. I have to change them out about once a year, because that I put mineral oil in them, and that mineral oil will congeal after a while or gets full of beetles and stuff like that, so I change them out about once a year. Another thing we talked about, harvesting honey, and often a question is how do I know if I can harvest my honey that's in my hive? Anybody here like new to beekeeping that is looking at their first harvest possibly? And I don't know, if you look at our Facebook page, when I made the announcement for this meeting, I posted a picture of a frame of honey. And I picked that frame for a purpose for this meeting tonight. It wasn't random, almost random, but you can see that it's not all capped. And it doesn't all have to be capped. It is nice if it is. But what's the rule of thumb is about 80% capped or so, something like that. Do you agree, John?
80% capped in a 9 or 10 frame super.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to all be capped, but because the capped, if it's capped, the bees know when it's dry enough to cap it. And I would say it's a rare exception that you get bees capped too wet. Now, something else you can do is, what I will do when I harvest my honey, I'll have like maybe a 5-gallon bucket there, and it gets all mixed up, and it's come from different sources and stuff like that, and I always want to know, am I going to, if I close this up, am I gonna have honey a month from now, or am I gonna have a batch of mead? Patty and I have figured out how to make mead by I had the same thing that happened to me. But anyway, this is a device called a what's it called, retractometer.
Yep.
So you can use it to determine the moisture content of your honey or your beer or whatever, but that's but anyway, so you can measure that. You want that honey to be ideally around 17–18% moisture content.
Or lower. Or lower.
But the bees will seem like when the honey that I've harvested that's been mostly all capped, it runs around 18%. I think you're gonna have to do something to it to get it much lower. You absolutely don't want it more than about 20%, because it will probably ferment if it is. So these devices are, John, you sell these things?
I do.
Or you can get them from the place that sells brewing supplies. Just it's fairly inexpensive investment. It's worth having. It's kind of a neat toy anyway.
Tested everything.
I had a lady ask me recently about, she had frames of honey, but it wasn't capped, and she said, how long does it take the bees to cap the honey? I said, it probably depends on the moisture content, and they'll cap the honey when it's time for them to cap the honey, so I haven't heard from her since, but.
Yeah, and that's about it, is that it takes them however long it takes them. And like, I haven't been into my hives to see where mine are. I just know that some of them have honey and some don't. And that frame that I posted was a picture of one out of one of my hives about a week ago or so. So they're starting to cap it. But, you know, kind of almost every frame. What I do with mine, if I get ready to harvest some, I'll go through and I'll get the frames that are capped, and the ones that are not capped, I put them back in there. Sometimes I'll decide that this hive over here deals with it better than others, and I'll take the honey and say, here, you cap it.
Mine aren't capping the lots right now, they're putting up a lots of nectar. And they're not drying a lots of it, because you can still pick a frame up and it'll drip out of it.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, that's another kind of informal way of testing moisture content, which is not the best way, but if you can kind of turn it upside down, if it starts dripping out, it's probably not ready. Anything, yeah, any other questions and stuff on good discussion?
So, if you've got fermented honey.
You can't ask questions, you ask hard questions.
Challenging.
Okay, go ahead.
Has anybody heard any negatives towards feeding mead basically back to your bees? Fermented honey.
Fermented honey.
Well,
Make some washboard and
I have found a good way of doing that. And I would think that would be a good thing to do, but I haven't figured out a way of doing it. I had a bright idea once upon a time. I thought it was a bright idea, and I think Patty had the same idea, but I had some syrup mixed up. This was like last fall, and I had some honey that I think that had left over, some goldenrod honey or something. And I said, well, I'll just put this honey into this syrup and mix it up and feed it back to the bees. And went back about a week later, and it was bubbling.
No, but I didn't give mine back to the bees.
Patty drank hers.
Not yet.
It's still bubbling.
But I think there's something about that, you know, the yeast, I guess, that's in the honey. You get that moisture content and get together, and you can end up with it kind of starting to.
So I have fed some of this to my bees in a frame feeder. Man, they'll take it and run with it. And I'm not seeing any negatives. That's what I'm asking. Do we know of any negatives to feeding back
I don't know.
fermented?
Could you
Ron,
heat it
can
to
I add to
evaporate
that?
the alcohol?
Hold up.
Yeah, when you're ready.
Who goes first?
In the Bee Culture magazine this month, and I think it was Dr. Thew, T-H-E-W, who wrote this article about feeding honey to your bees. I don't believe he mentioned about it being fermented, but what he said about that is that we are known to be told, oh, that's not a good idea, you don't know if the honey is good, you don't know what's in it, that kind of thing, if you don't know where it came from. And he said that he's heard that for years, but he also knows that he's done it for years. And what he does is he uses honey that he wouldn't feed to people. So why he wouldn't feed it to people, I don't remember that he said. But what he does is he cuts it by about 30%. And they, like you're saying, they eat it up. They love it.
With water? Cut it with water?
Yeah, with water.
Well, I didn't cut mine with anything, and they still ate it.
They were
But
bees.
if you're gonna cut it with water, you need, I would think, my experience is you need to feed that right away and don't, or refrigerate it or something. Man.
Well, could you heat the honey to evaporate the alcohol out of it?
That had fermented.
Yeah.
I guess if you heated it enough to kill the yeast.
Why? Big question is, why do we need to?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, now that fermented honey, I fed it to John's bees, I put it out in I put it in just an open source feeder, and they seem to like it just fine. So, your bees been doing the fancy dancing? Anything else?
I've got a suggestion for a future meeting and
Okay.
probably something more in the winter time, but, you know, I was talking with Jim here, I've been dealing with bees now for about 7 years, and I still consider myself a newbie. there are people out there that really know how to have their hives set up, and I think it's all population wise, to produce the most honey. I would like to learn that from somebody, so there's an art to it, I guess, that I'm not good at, so.
Well, do you know anybody that would come talk to us?
He's looking
I
at
don't.
Bob?
There's been a guy here talking about it. The gentleman that came from, I wanna say Sherwood or something, and he has these tall hives, and I was really impressed until they were all, shallow. But he made, I guess he made a lot of honey, that was his claim to fame, that's why he was here talking. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, and he, I asked him how he got those, he says, well, that's all my swarms that I catch. And he stacks them up and.
Yeah.
says
Has a lot to do with location too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think that
What
makes a
about
huge
changing up, I've got, changed my mind there. Some years I want to have one deep and a medium, and I'll decide, no, I need 2 deeps before I put a medium on. But what if I'm there and I'm running out of boxes and I've got a deep, I've got a medium, and now I've got some deeps left with no mediums? It don't hurt to, kind of space them like that, deep, medium, deep.
We've got mediums on the bottom and deeps on the top.
We've got everything.
Just put frames there and.
Whatever you have, put it.
Use it. Work.
I've got
Trying to stay
about
out of John's
every
shop.
permutation of box combination that there can be. I've got, well, I have had a deep and a shallow, a deep on bottom, shallow on top, sometimes shallow ends up on bottom. I am trying to go to one, to get it simpler, cause I really don't like having deeps and mediums both. I know that works, some people do it very good, but it makes life difficult sometimes, especially in the spring. But bees are pretty forgiving in that regard.
Well, if I had to do it again, I would have nothing but deeps.
Oh, wow.
And I went with shallows for my supers because of bad back, but now learning from that, I just think it's just so much simpler to have one size frame, one size box. And this guy can talk all about that issue.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I have just the right combinations of deeps and mediums that I never have the right equipment available when I need to make a change.
Yours sounds exactly like me. I always got exactly the wrong thing available.
So I go and buy a bunch from John, 5
John
or
likes
6 or
it.
8 or whatever. But then the next year, I'm right back where I was, because I've either got all the deep stuff done, and when I need to do a split or something, all I got is mediums. So I've got deep frames I need to put in medium boxes that don't work. So
And I end
it's a
up putting, I've ended up putting medium frames in deep boxes a lot. It's not too bad.
That would be a good thing. John, you do buy
I guess, I've had this idea of a program that I thought might be good if we can find somebody to present it. And, is like making that transition from, I wanna call it from a bee haver to a beekeeper. But sometimes I think I'm just still in the bee haver stage. Is really how to manage, to move from having a couple of hives of bees out in your backyard that you take care of like your little pets, and go out there and pet them and stuff like that, and watch them, to managing an apiary. So, having to move from, if I have a hive dies, I gotta go buy one, or something to kind of a self-sustaining apiary. Kind of like a little.
What does Justin do? What does Justin do? Yeah.
Well, Justin is a commercial beekeeper, you would
Right.
call it. Now, I'm not talking about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're not gonna
he's
go
doing
there.
nothing any different than what we do.
What we're talking
He
about.
just does it on a much larger scale.
And more consistent, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because,
He's there at the store a lot too.
I think you use it like.
cause there's advantages, you know, once you get to a certain number, like, I know when I first started out, I had one hive and it was really nice and it worked great and I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I think it swarmed itself to death the next spring and I had no hives. And it was devastating. And if you got, and I know it happens a lot to people, they have a hive or two and something happens and they lose one or two. If you lose 100% to 50% of your hives, that's terrible. That's pretty devastating. But now, nowadays I've got somewhere between 20 maybe. And so if one of them dies, oh well, I'm just saying is that, moving from, just having a couple beehives, and having a apiary that's kind of self-sustaining, and learning how to manage resources, so you can share resources. How you put all that together, mix it with a certain time of year, whatever.
Yeah.
I've got somebody in mind that might could do that. Anything else? Any other programs or something that you would like to see in the future? If you think of something, go to our Facebook page and just post it there, or just tell me, and we'll see if we can find somebody or do a program there.
I did Google about the washboarding of the bees, and it says it's a cleaning activity. So, I mean, Google can be wrong, but several hits that said it's a cleaning activity, so no big
I
panic.
thought that's just crazy. That's what I.
Well, they've been having its mead.
Yeah.
They drank too much.
But I know they seem to only do that when it's hot. But,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
One suggestion was you could do one in the spring, how to split hives.
Well, we had one of those.
I did.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan did that for us.
Well, we had them, but it didn't work.
It didn't work.
No, his was busy swarming.
He'd walk out with the things.
We were
and they're
gonna
swarming all around him.
do it in the afternoon, and 10 o'clock in the morning, they swarm, and they're gone. Twice, same hive.
Yeah, so, and then splitting is, it's time sensitive.
Oh, I mean, this hive had a dozen queen cells, they just put all kinds of. And I didn't take them off like I had been told, so they swarmed. I tried to catch the swarm, it's gone. I wait about a week, gonna go out and split them. I'll walk out the door, here they go again, they're already gone.
So you just said good riddance and walk back to the house.
Well, I tried to get the gas cans, and Regina wouldn't let me burn them out.
They get you mad.
So
what?
They can be
I went and invented the John for 2 days, I think, in a row. Poor guy.
Make
What-
you a
what
bunch
month
of
were you trying to
3-frame
split?
nukes.
3-frame nukes.
Take queen cells and start dropping them in 3-frame nukes. Leave a few in your original hive, and so you've got a whole lot of spares.
Hopefully you'll have something in it.
Something will stay.
Well, I did catch one swarm this year, and it wasn't even the 2 that I lost, or at least if
It
it
was
was.
somebody else's
They come back about a week later, and I caught them about a week later.
Sometimes too, you'll have 2 queens in a swarm, and if you put them in a box, one of those will try to swarm out.
Well, I put one swarm, it swarmed out, one went up, part of it went up in the tree, part of it went in a brush pile I had, because we cut a tree down. So I go and I move the swarm from the brush pile into the box, thought everything was great. Everything else that didn't come with the tray, come on in a little bit later, swarm from the tree, come down. I'm thinking, okay, I've got this one, I'll leave it alone, let it calm down for a few minutes. An hour later, I went out there, wasn't a bee in the world in around.
Have you considered putting a queen excluder on the front of your hive? when you
I
get
didn't at that, well, I wasn't sure the queen was in there, so when they all started moving over, I thought the queen might have been in there, but I didn't put the excluder on there.
Now, this is Ron's opinion here, but if you are waiting to do splits after you've already seen queen cells, you're too late. That's like trying to stop an oncoming train, and because that train is left the station and they're gonna go. The time to make splits, like Mr. Ryan kind of spoke to us, and if you went trying to take it, actually that was a little late probably in the game. I guess we should have him come about a month earlier.
That was the exact week I did that. I was gonna do that on Sunday afternoon.
After the Monday he talked.
After the Monday he talked, I was gonna do it all Sunday. Well, Sunday morning they swarm.
John, when do you like to do your splits? I'm beginning to believe that the best time to do splits is about as soon as you start seeing drones, right?
Well,
Which
you
be end of
always
March.
try to do them as soon as I saw drones on the wing. If you wait for the drones to be flying, you've already had some swarms. If you'll do your splits after all your drone cells are, for the most part, capped, and you do an inspection, and you start seeing the cups, okay? Well, you got a lot of capped drones approved, and you got the cups being laid.
It's time.
You can split, cause you're within days of having drones on the wing, and you're within 2 weeks of having queens that are gonna need them. So, you can get away quite a bit with just watching your drones and your cell cups.
Yeah.
March. Jacob's coming out on mine.
And also, thing about splits is that, in my experience, and I think it's pretty much everybody's experience, is that, doing a split, it's not 100% operate thing, it's a gamble. What is it, Mr. Ryan says about 30 to 40% of your queens that leave to get mated don't make it back. And so, and I've got, and that's kind of location specific too. I have at several yards, the yard at my house, when I do a split, it's pretty high success rate of getting a queen back mated, which I'm thinking that wherever the drone yard or the bar where she goes is close by, I guess. But then I've got another yard that, when I see a swarm or try to do a split, it's very low success rate. Just, and that particular yard, I just don't make splits out of it. Unless I leave the queen there, and I might take the split back to another higher percentage place, if that makes any sense. And that's just, and I don't know how to tell that except for, trial and error, which, if you got a location with a lot of other beekeepers around, I think your queens are gonna more successfully breed than if you got a place that's isolated and there's not many bees or not many beekeepers around.
The mockingbird is your worst enemy on the queens.
What is?
Mockingbird.
So are my summer tanagers.
Yeah.
Wind shields are pretty hard too.
Speaking of birds and bees, John Wright did it. I have noticed over the years, I feed hummingbirds. And you can kind of tell what the nectar flow is doing by watching your hummingbirds. I've got a hummingbird feeder, and I went from having like one a day show up every now and then. My nectar, my little feeder I'd have to just change the water out about once a week because they weren't eating it, to suddenly once a day. And so if you want to keep tabs on the nectar flow without having to go look at your bees, just get a hummingbird feeder and just watch it, because they'll tell you whenever the nectar flow is gone, it's drying up. Anything else? I'm about talked out and bored people to death. Any other questions while you brain trust or John?
I have another
And
question.
Ann.
I've got 2 hives within 20 feet of my garden.
They don't bother
And
you.
the only thing I see in that garden is bumblebees.
Yep. Welcome to the club.
They're gonna go farther. They're gonna
I
go
mean-
farther.
They want us too close.
I think that gardens don't produce, there's just not enough resource there. Again, this is, I'm speculating here. This is how I got in beekeeping, was
Well, that's how I got into beekeeping, is because we want to put in a raised bed garden. I'm thinking, well, if we put bees here, it'll pollinate and we'll have lots of fruits, and that definitely has not happened.
Well, exactly the same thing happened to me, because I had a garden, my squash wasn't getting pollinated, so I need bees, so I got bees and.
Squash still doesn't get pollinated.
Well, actually, was somewhere along the line, the bumblebees and carpenter bees did a pretty good job. But honeybees don't, I don't think there's just not enough resource there. It takes a lot of flowers. Remember, like how many flowers you got in your garden? Maybe 1,000 or 2 at best. But honeybees need millions and millions of flowers.
Where do they find them all? I don't see many flowers.
Trees.
Beside the road, they do.
But,
I mean, I've got white clover in my yard, they're not touching it.
Well, they're
Well,
all
it's not a
over,
lot.
they're all over our clover. They're all over our clover, but there's quite a lot.
And the bees are gonna be out there searching and finding what is best at the time. And it's always changing.
Yeah, and there may be a good nectar source like clover there, but if you got a blackberry patch over there, blackberries, I'm gonna say that most of our honey is made by blackberries and privet.
Lots of privet.
And that's the major source.
Privet's already gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
One other thought on the robin I read somewhere, cheap way to do it is like take some big vapor rub and put over the entrance down the bottom of your hive, and take your towel and put, the towel, the top, one end of it on the top, put a brick on it and kind of drape it over the front, and it kind of, your bees are oriented to coming back there, but the robber bees, it kind of disorients them, and the smell kind of drives them away. So I don't know where I read that, but that's a cheaper alternative than seeing a job.
Come on, man.
I dropped a couple
Nobody
of.
likes big vapor rub.
I dropped a couple hundred last week, so that's a cheap way that I read. You might try, just a whole lot and not know.
I have one.
Patty.
One thing that I used to do, of course, I'm the one that names all my bees, right? So I'm out there all the time, but when I would see robbing going on, I would stand out there with my garden hose over the hive. And the robbing bees usually leave to where you can close your hive down, and I throw a cloth over it for the rest of the day. And then the next day, they're pretty much done with it. But if you put a shower on, the bees don't like to get wet, they think it's raining. And so most of them will go back to where they belong, and they'll leave your bees alone. That's worked really well for me.
Well, how do you determine whether they're robber bees or not?
They have mad schools.
Little man.
It's kind of hard sometimes because they do have a behavior that, like if you have maybe a bunch of bees that hatch out about the same time, what they'll do is they come out of the hive all at once, and they'll be around the hive kind of doing this. And what they say they're doing, they're basically figuring out where they are, so that whenever they do go out and forage, they know how to get back to the hive. Whereas if you got robbing, they kind of looks the same, and you got to study them, but you'll see them until it gets pretty late in the game. Anyway, they'll be fighting each other on the board there. John, does somebody else have a better way of recognizing robbing from just orientation? Because they kind of look the same.
You're gonna have bees contacting bees on the landing board. So you're gonna have doubles tied up, falling off the front. You're gonna have bees rushing in, bees rushing out. There's a little battle going on. I mean, it's pretty obvious. When it's robbing, they're louder. A lot of noise at the entrance, and a lot of confusion.
I remember seeing my first orientation flights and thought, God, they're swarming. And then I saw a real swarm. It's like, oh, that's it. And then I saw orientation flights and thought, God, I'm being robbed. And I saw my first robbing. It looks different, you know what I mean?
Speaking of swarming, that I haven't actually been standing next to a hive when it swarmed very much, but it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome experience, really.
Yeah, twice is really.
Twice in 2 weeks.
I mean, even though it's like you're watching your bees go up in smoke, it's still pretty impressive experience.
Well, this same hive swarmed a third time. Luckily, they went up to the limb and turned around and come back down. So I guess it was probably the new queen getting ready for breeding.
Right.
So they just come right back to the hive.
Practice.
Huh?
Practice.
Practice, yeah. That's when the gas can was about to come out.
So who's boss?
Anyway.
Should we go ahead and reduce the entrance down?
In the case of a robbing,
Before they start robbing, yeah.
You could, and that probably would help, because it's much smaller area to defend. And now the concern that I have with reducing my entrances down real small in the summertime is that doesn't allow much ventilation to cool a hive.
Well, one thing with the robbing, most of the robbers will fly straight into your hive instead of landing on the landing board and walking in. They'll fly in. So if you see them doing that, that's usually a pretty good sign of robbing.
There's a frenzy.
Yeah.
And you talk about feeding in the summer I know sometimes people will like to add like Honeybee Healthy or something to their syrup, but that can cause troubles. So if you do that, you gotta be careful about using anything like Honeybee Healthy which is really good for the bees, and bees really like it, but a human can smell it, so a bee can detect it. So I've seen that kick off, the use of that kick off robbing too.
I have a honey question. This is a statement and a question. A customer at Farmers Market last week told me that she had just recently read that if you eat honey in the evening, that it'll help to stimulate your own natural melatonin, which helps us to sleep better. And what she had read was that people are doing this with children that have autism. Evidently they have trouble sleeping. I'd never heard this, and I wondered if anyone else had heard this. We know a lot of other good things about honey, but I had never heard it associated with our own natural melatonin.
Never heard that. That's interesting.
Well, I have heard that it would help you sleep. How much would it?
Be worth a try. Well, I think we're about done tonight. We got door prizes to give away. Who's the door prizes?